So thank you, and now we are moving on to question 9, starting with Lilyan, Prado, Carrillo. Okay, so zoning is the kind of thing that keeps a gas well or heavy industry from going up next to a daycare. It keeps a loud business from going up in a residential neighborhood. Housing is also exorbitantly expensive in our area, and we also have very limited housing inventory. What are your thoughts on our current zoning regulations? How do we accommodate responsible growth while limiting the burden of expansion on our existing residents? And what areas do you believe make the most sense for expansion?
Okay, I kind of said this earlier. Some of our zoning policies we probably need to take a look at again. I was not aware until I started talking to people that even there's a zoning with parking, right? So any apartments that come up, there has to be a 1-to-1 ratio. So for every apartment room, for every bedroom, there has to be a parking spot next to it or for it. So that means, a lot of these apartments, a lot of this affordable housing that's going up is losing a lot of space and a lot of unit space to parking. Some homes may not have that many cars, right? Especially people who are maybe having to live in apartments may not be able to afford all of that, right? And so I'm thinking of a couple of friends I have that live in apartments. They're single moms, they live with their 2 kids, right? So they have a 2-bedroom apartment, but they only need 1 parking spot. Does that make sense? And so we want to make sure that we're kind of getting rid of those one-size-fits-all policies, those one-size-fits-all zoning policies, to make sure that we're not limiting the developers that are trying to come in and are trying to do and make affordable housing. So definitely looking at that. I also, with the sustainability, I've been learning a lot about that. They're saying, things like the electricity costs could be impacted if we were having multi-family homes, right? Units that are connected. The more walls are connected on each side, that's the less electricity that's going to be used. Their cost is going to go down lower, right? And so we need to diversify our housing market. We need to diversify what kind of homes are going up, what kind of apartments, what kind of townhomes, multiplexes, right? And so I think that that's something that we absolutely need to do. In terms of zoning with everything else, I think that that's something that we need to be just mindful of. We need to make sure that we're just looking at the best possible outcomes for the people that are currently living here. I hate hearing that people are working here or that people work here and then they have to live somewhere else because they can't afford to live in Denton. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jill Jester, running for place 6.
Thank you.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I think I've got it. Thank you so much. I think that zoning is an important part of what our city can do to encourage certain types of current treatment of buildings as well as what's coming in the future. I think it is worth revisiting the one-size-fits-all zoning. And part of that reason is, for example, there was a work session recently on Southeast Denton where they talked about a lot of people that maybe can't afford a single-family home want to be able to live in that neighborhood. However, what you don't want is a huge maybe apartment complex right next to a small single-family home. So I think having some flexibility with zoning as far as gradual changes, maybe a single-family home next to a duplex, next to a fourplex, and then maybe apartment next to that. But make it to where we have diverse housing even within neighborhoods. Secondly, I've come to find that we have a certain zoning designation for mixed use. However, it doesn't mandate mixed use. It only says that mixed use can be utilized. Therefore, I think there are times that certain citizens think that a mixed use development is coming in and only apartments then are going in. And this lessens the accessibility to grocery stores, to your doctor. And I know that we also have transportation issues. And so if we encourage mixed use development, then we're going to see more accessibility for those without transportation, and people are not having to clog up our roadways with traffic as they get to different parts of town. So I would say this is something to look at.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Gerard, Hudspeth, incumbent mayor. Would you like me to repeat the question, Gerard?
If you'd be so kind.
Sure. Zoning is the kind of thing that keeps a gas well or heavy industry from going up next to a daycare. It keeps a loud business from going up in a residential neighborhood. Housing is also exorbitantly expensive in our area as we have limited housing inventory. What are your thoughts on current zoning regulations? How do we accommodate responsible growth while limiting the burden of expansion on our existing residents? And what areas do you believe make the most sense for expansion?
Okay, thank you. First and foremost, we need a city process that regularly reviews the existing zoning of undeveloped land. Because here's what happened, the city's not sneaking up on anyone, that's for sure. You have a meeting, you got a public notice, you got another meeting, and then you got a vote. So by the time we do all those things, there's an application in and they're expediting things. You're not sneaking up on anyone. So we have to regularly review those things so that we can be in front of those things so that we don't have like what happened on Scripture Street where they found a gap in zoning and built this monster apartment complex and there's nothing we could do about it. We voted against it, they built it anyway because they were allowed to by right because we didn't identify those gaps in our zoning. So a regular review of our zoning plan would be important to me to roll out. And then also negotiate outcomes, right? It's talking to people, understanding what our options are, what do we need. I've suggested kind of breaking our city up into quadrants. Each quadrant should have some of the bare necessities in grocery store, medical facilities, et cetera, so you know what's missing. So then an applicant comes in that area and you say, we are missing a grocery store in this area. Can we partner with you for fresh foods or those sort of things? That's what we did on the Loop 288 project where we needed more fresh food. So we don't have kids running to Family Dollar or whatever to get bad food. Let's have apples, oranges available right there in their complex. So we work to do that. And then, well, that's the gist of it. And so areas for growth, west of town there. I think those 3,000 acres would be important. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lucas Wedgeworth running for mayor. Do you want me to repeat the question, Lucas?
Yes, please.
Okay. Zoning is the kind of thing that keeps a gas well or heavy industry from going up next to a daycare. It keeps a loud business from going up in a residential neighborhood. Housing is also very exorbitantly expensive in our areas. We have limited housing inventory. What are your thoughts on current zoning regulations? How do we accommodate responsible growth while limiting the burden of expansion on our existing residents? And what areas do you believe make the most sense for expansion?
Well, I think first and foremost, the zoning laws need to be looked at. There's a lot of laws that are on the books that are, pushing 100 years old. And there's a lot of gaps in what made our city work great to where we are now. There's a reason why our favorite parts of town are like downtown. It represents a lot of variety. Houses next to small and medium apartment complexes, next to businesses. Those are typically most cities' favorite places in town. But the moment you go just outside of those downtown historic sections, you get cookie cutter neighborhoods. You get food deserts because a neighborhood's so expansive that there's no place for a grocery store nearby. And that's why I say we need to build smaller and closer to home. These giant one-size-fits-all solutions benefit nobody but outside interests. And we should be focusing on what interests the people of Denton first and foremost. Things like zoning are crucial. We have cellular little neighborhoods throughout Denton that have 1 or 2 exits while they have a huge, store complex right across a wooded area. Why is there not a street that connects that neighborhood to that shopping center? It doesn't take much looking at the planning that we have right now to see that we are way over leveraged in this master, I guess I don't want to say that, almost cursed. We don't want to be over leveraged when it comes to how we're handling this, zoning issue. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, and Erica Garland running for place 5. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Zoning is the kind of thing that keeps a gas well or heavy industry from going up next to a daycare. It keeps a loud business from going up in a residential neighborhood. Housing is also, sorry about that. Housing is also exorbitantly expensive in our area as we have limited housing inventory. What are your thoughts on current zoning regulations? How do we accommodate responsible growth while limiting the burden of expansion on our existing residents? And what areas do you believe make the most sense for expansion?
So when you talk about affordable housing, you really have to understand the definition. It's one of those words that people kind of throw around loosely, but what does it really mean? Are we talking about people that are living, below the area median income? Are we talking about incentivized housing? Are we talking about workforce housing? Everybody wants to be able to afford their housing at every economic level you're at. So I think that zoning is a critical tool that we need to be looking at to solve the affordable housing issue. We're not going to be able to incentivize it enough. There's simply not enough money to keep incentivizing to solve the problem, because it's a big problem. Right now, Denton has, I think, 15 multi-family complex projects going on that in total almost amount to just shy of 4,000 units. In comparison, single family houses, I think it's 8 projects, 8 neighborhoods going on. So we really want to be intentional about how we're growing and make sure that, you know, we look around, we look at Denton, we see lots of apartments going up. But are they affordable? Are they affordable apartments, or do they cost more than many people pay for houses? You look around and you see a lot of warehouses going up, a lot of distribution centers. Denton, I think, really needs to focus on diversifying and making sure that we don't lean too heavy in one area, whether it be apartments or warehouses. We need single family residents that are affordable just as much as we need apartments that are affordable. The city could definitely, you know, incentivize some of those projects requiring the apartments to maybe have 10% that goes to affordable housing.
Thank you. Okay, for adjacent the incumbent place matters. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm going to try to get a lot in here. So, as was just mentioned, affordable housing. A lot of folks wonder why we don't have enough affordable housing. You want to know why? I encourage you to go back, I believe it was about 6 weeks ago, to our council meeting. It doesn't help incentivize developers to bring affordable projects to the city of Denton when there are members of council who participate along with neighborhoods in castigating people who need to take access for affordable housing, right? Lower income folks, black and brown folks, LGBTQ folks. I don't want them living here, they're gonna drop my property values. That doesn't really help affordable housing complexes come to the city. But we do need affordable housing. For me, this question is really about how the city wants to grow overall. We should be focusing on infill development. That's the key word there. We want the city to grow within to without. So one easy way that we can do that is we can make sure, and council has exclusive purview over impact fees, we can make sure that in the city center, impact fees are as low as possible, if not zero. And then as you move out from the city center, impact fees get higher. That's going to incentivize more smaller development and developers to come build in some of the vacant lots we have around town. We actually do have a council committee that really looks at some of these zoning things. It's called the DCRC. It's made up of planning and zoning commissioners and a couple of council members. And they get deep into the issues and they make recommendations, like they're looking at parking minimums right now. In addition to this, we can also focus on continuing to do small area plans. I'm very happy that when I first joined council, we started the Northeast and the Southeast Bend area plans.
Thank you.